So emergency management and safety services here at UNT, our job, our mission is really to promote and support a culture of safety and emergency preparedness throughout the UNT community. That includes during severe storm weather in the spring, but also winter weather in the winter months. So we're going to be talking primarily about winter weather today. And ultimately, we want to put a lot of tools in your hands. So the objectives today are going to be, recognizing the types of winter weather possible in North Texas, understanding how UNT will notify you if we're closed or if any other kind of threat related to winter weather, and then how to identify how you can prepare for winter weather and what are those things you can do to prepare yourself, your families, those your staff, for the winter weather we seem to have. It seems like every January, February. But to hear more about that specifically, we're going to be hearing from a very special guest today, Jennifer Dunn with the National Weather Service. So Jennifer, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you whenever you're ready to share your screen.
All right, sounds good. Looks like I'm sharing now, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of just kick things off here, talking a little bit about the outlook for this upcoming winter season, but also for some changes to our winter weather products that we made that started actually back in October 1st. Just a little bit about myself. My official title is Warning Coordination Meteorologist, and that's a simple way, or a complicated way, I should say, of saying that I oversee our office's outreach, education, and our partnership program. So our main partners are in emergency management, like Corey and the rest of the emergency management group there at the University of North Texas, and we're happy to partner with them to provide y'all some weather information for this seminar today in preparation for the rest of the winter season. I have been here at this office for about 19 years now. It's hard to believe, so I'm very familiar with the challenges that we do have here in the winter. And like Corey said, as I will emphasize on one slide, it is not a matter of if here in North Texas, if it will happen, it's a matter of when. And that's what history and climatology tells us with regard to having winter precip happen at least once or twice every winter. So we'll go ahead and just kind of hopefully get through my slides pretty quickly here. Give me 1 second. I am missing one screen there. There we go. Okay. So the outlook for this winter is for the return of La Nina. We were in the El Nino pattern last year, and we weren't quite expecting a flip to La Nina as quickly as we did this year, but we are going back into La Nina. So what exactly does that mean? Well, for North Texas, it means that the pattern tends to favor better chances for above average temperatures and below average precipitation. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about what that actually means in the next couple slides. So don't just automatically assume it's going to be hot and dry for the entire winter. It's not what we're staying here, but we can use it kind of as a starting point as we prepare for the upcoming winter. The influence of La Nina is already kind of starting to take place here in the fall and the winter. That's when it's most prominent, but the influence of it can last into the spring. And we're not going to talk a lot about the spring outlook, focusing on the winter here, but we still always want to be cognizant of severe weather threat, regardless of the El Nino or La Nina winter pattern as it goes into the spring as well. So just a little bit about the climate outlook. It does not attempt to predict weather. Weather is your day-to-day occurrence. Climate is going to be a monthly or a seasonal average. So I can't tell you right now if it is going to be icy on one of your basketball day games coming up here later in the winter in that January or February timeframe. We're looking at an average over the 3 months of December, January, and February. That's how the meteorological climate or the meteorological community defines the winter months, is December, January, February. So the outlooks provide the likelihood that temperatures and precipitation will fall in either one of 3 categories: above normal, near normal, or below normal. And it also takes a look at how does this impact drought conditions, which we're not going to talk a whole lot about here, but with the ongoing rainfall deficits that we've had over the last couple of months. I know it's rained soon or recently. I know it's raining here again today and tomorrow, but we still are in some deficits there. It actually has an impact on drought conditions. Again, the climate outlook does not predict seasonal snowfall amounts. We're just looking at temperature and winter precipitation as a whole there. But we can look at historical climate records and find common patterns, and I'll talk about that a little bit on the slides coming up. And again, we're talking about averaging over the entire 3-month season there. So we're not looking at a week by week or a day by day basis here when we're talking about the winter outlook. Real quickly, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, or what we commonly call the ENSO, is the one of the more common inputs into the winter outlook, but they use that with historical events as well. And that's where our climatologists at the Climate Prediction Center study and have the background and knowledge and education and all this to put these winter outlooks together for us. And then we pare it down here onto the local level. But there are other factors that we're not going to talk about here today. Just know that there are other factors that can offset that at times and can still have impacts on delivery of Arctic cold air. It allows us to maybe see that about 2 weeks in advance sometimes, and just other ways that it can kind of offset or temporarily impact the influence of La Nina during the winter months. So it's not just about La Nina and the temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. There are more global patterns going on that interact that as meteorologists and climatologists, we have to be aware of also. So the outlook itself, the temperature outlook for our area is no surprise considering it's a La Nina pattern, better chances for above normal temperatures. So again, doesn't mean it's going to be warm and hot the entire winter. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but this outlook is lining up with what we would expect for an outlook for La Nina. Better chances for above normal temperatures. And on the precipitation, no surprise there, better chances for below normal precipitation. But that does not mean we're not going to have any winter weather events at all. As we've already talked about, we average about one winter weather event every winter since the late 1800s here in North Texas. So it's not a matter of if it will happen, it's generally a matter of when it will happen in the winter months. So since these are climatological averages at the Weather Service, we're going to be monitoring those weekly and daily weather model runs, trying to pick up on when any incoming cold air deliveries, Arctic outbreaks, if that happens, and or arrival of winter precipitation happens, providing as much heads up as we can. And then, as I alluded to, but I'm not going to talk a lot about, is that fire weather concerns tend to increase in La Nina years. We're already are in somewhat of drought conditions now. Those will only continue to worsen or will develop in some areas of North Texas if rainfall deficits are realized. And so that's more of a concern for our A&M Forestry Service partners, our firefighters, dry vegetation. They could have a little bit more active year that they are gearing up for across not only North Texas, but the entire state also too. So just a little bit about La Nina winters. I've pulled statistics since 2000. I mean, we could go back as late as the 1800s, but just kind of looking in a little bit more of the relatively shorter term period since about 2000. If you look at the different bar charts here, first is the average temperature of La Nina, or of all the winters, whether it's El Nino, La Nina, neutral, and then the purple is our 30-year average. But there's really not a big temperature difference between the mean temperatures, the max temperatures, and the min temperatures, no matter which ENSO pattern you're in. So not saying that there's a lot of similarities, there usually are, but it's average-wise, we don't tend to see a big shift in our winter temperature and precipitation if we're in La Nina and El Nino. Those differences are a little more prominent in places like the Northern Plains, even the Central Plains that tend to get those bigger winter systems than we do, and a more active jet stream in the winter. But there's not a whole lot of difference between the temperatures when we're in El Nino versus La Nina. What you might notice, though, is it does look like El Nino, that blue bar on the snowfall, is a lot snowier in El Nino versus La Nina, but that actually is being weighted or skewed a little bit by our snowfall in 2010. We had a record 17.1 inches of snowfall. That's recorded at DFW Airport. That's our official climate site here in North Texas. And if you remove that skewed higher number out, the average snowfall in La Nina and El Nino winters ends up being just about the same. There's not a lot of difference there. So it's not saying necessarily that El Nino is snowier than La Nina, and we don't see anything in La Nina. They both bring us winter precipitation events, and about the same no matter which period we are in. I really just kind of want to touch base on a couple of things to remember too when we talk about normal temperatures. There really isn't such a thing as a normal winter day in North Texas. This graph, the brown area, is kind of our average highs and lows, are highlighting that. And we tend to fluctuate very rapidly and even from day to day between that. We have cold fronts that will drop us down for a couple days, and then it will get warm and above average before that, or above normal before and after those periods. So normal is a smooth average, but we tend to have a lot more fluctuations that we just have to keep up with during the winter months as cold fronts come in. then the atmosphere recovers and it gets warm, and then another cold front arrives. So we're going to be watching all of those systems to see which ones may have winter precip, which ones may have sub-freezing temperatures, which ones may have below 10-degree temperatures on occasion, and trying to provide as much heads up as we can to all of our partners and the public so that they have time to prepare. So just to highlight a few more of the climate statistics, one of the questions we get is can we rely on this winter outlook? Like, it's a starting point. Is it actually a good starting point? And when you look at the temperature side, yes, it actually is a good starting point. About 75% of La Nina winters since 2000 have been above normal in their temperature. We've had cold snaps and cold periods in there, but about 75% of them have averaged out above normal on the temperatures. Again, emphasizing cold Arctic air will still arrive. We're still going to have winter and cold winter temperatures. So keep an eye on the forecast for when that happens. On precipitation, yes, the general outlook of better chances for below normal is a good start. Majority of our La Nina winters since 2000 have had below normal average precipitation. And this is really going to be your rain, liquid precipitation, and your melted ice and melted snow also. That's kind of how we define precipitation in the winter. It's all those categories. You'll notice, though, too, that El Nino also tends to have more below normal precipitation also since 2000. That's just kind of some of the pattern that we have been in. So for temperature and precipitation, the outlook does tend to give us historically, since 2000 at least, a good starting point. Snow, can we rely on it? Again, the outlook does not necessarily or does not give us a snow outlook, but we can still kind of, looking at history, get a little bit of maybe an early prediction on the snow there. And yeah, I mean, we kind of can pick that out. But we have to remember that El Nino and La Nina winters have both averaged below normal since 2000. However, as we've said already a couple times before, it's not a matter of if we're going to have winter precipitation, which is freezing rain, freezing drizzle, sleet, or snow, any of those kinds. It's a matter of when. Since the late 1800s, when our records officially began in the DFW area, there has never been a winter without at least one winter precipitation event. I'm not talking about cold Arctic air delivery. We're talking about just winter precipitations. We average about 1.5 days of some type of measurable snow or sleet every winter since the late 1800s. And so that's what we want to be prepared for, or making sure that we're prepared for, with the help of your emergency management department and your city and county officials too, so that you know, if you don't know already, you know exactly what to do when that winter precipitation is showing up in the forecast. So 2 quick things here to just kind of summarize up. We have high confidence in La Nina conditions. We already have a La Nina advisory out by the Climate Prediction Center. We're more likely to have above normal temperatures, but we're still going to have Arctic air and cold air arrive at times. We're favored to have below normal precipitation, which will increase drought conditions. This increases the threat for wildfires, reduces our heavy rain and flooding threat, and then we can expect at least one winter event to occur. What we don't know, though, is how far above normal our temperature is going to be. How warm is it actually going to be? Or how far below, how dry is our precipitation going to be? We don't know how severe or how frequent Arctic outbreaks and winter weather events will happen. And we know that subseasonal anomalies could, if they kind of fall in line too, they could offset that. A really good example of that is, and everybody hates when we mention this, but the February 2021 winter storm Uri. That was actually a La Nina winter. And so we had gone through December and January, actually pretty warm. That event happened. It was very impactful for the region, still in a La Nina winter, so it can happen. But that winter ended up actually being below normal temperatures and then near normal on precipitation, because we had a flip there at the very end of the winter months there. So it can happen, and we'll keep an eye out for that. To wrap things up here, excuse me for a second. Apparently I get choked up talking about Winter Storm Uri. I don't want to think about that event again. But we have made some changes to our watch, warning, and advisory products this summer. This slide here kind of summarizes that. We used to issue freeze warnings, watches and warnings, and then hard freeze watches and warnings. They're both being issued under the headline freeze watch and freeze warning. And then in the text of the product, excuse me, In the text of the product, we will specify, is it temperatures are just going to be freezing below 32 degrees, or will they be at hard freeze criteria, which is less than 10 degrees there? So remember, really at about 10 degrees is when we start to have more issues with pipes freezing. It can happen, anywhere in the teens, but that's really where we start to see the larger impacts. We don't issue freeze warnings for below 28. You're already below, freezing at 28 degrees, but 28 degrees, if there's winter precipitation, is a lot of times where you'll start to see more widespread road impacts if there's winter weather. You can still have road impacts on winter weather at 33, 32, 38, kind of in that space between 32 and 28 degrees, but they tend to become more widespread at 28 degrees. So our criteria for freeze and hard freeze is 32 degrees below and then 10 degrees and below. And then we used to issue wind chill advisories and wind chill warnings, but the criteria for that didn't really meet what impacts were here in North Texas. And so there actually was a national effort to redo all that criteria. And so they got new names. They're now called cold weather advisories and extreme cold warnings, to help you hopefully understand that. And so when the wind chill, not the temperature, when the wind chill is going to be below 10 degrees, we will issue that cold weather advisory. And then when the wind chill is supposed to be 0 or below, I am really sorry, excuse me, then we will issue that extreme cold warning. So you're going to see some new names there too. We'll continue to do some information about those to hopefully avoid any confusion. But we're trying to, in a way, simplify some of that. And so those are some of our new products, not new products, but new names, I should say, that we have for our products starting this year. So you guys are doing great by being here, preparing, learning about university kind of protocol and area resources. But if the Weather Service is one of your trusted weather sources, we thank you for that. Where our information is always out there publicly, and your partners at UNT are using some of that information to share and prepare with y'all too. And I will hang on for a little bit, but if there are any questions, certainly I will keep an eye on the chat as well. But if anybody has any questions just in general, you can always follow up with our office after that. I'll turn it back over to you, Corey. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but thank you for the invite, and I hope it is an easy winter for all of us.
Thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I would say, guys, if you have a question for Jennifer, I'm going to go ahead and continue my presentation. You can put your question for Jennifer in the chat while she's here, and she can answer you that way. While I go ahead and get underway with some of our specific protocols for kind of what we do here. Let's see. I'm going to make sure you guys can all see. You guys can see my screen. Linda, I see you there. Can you give me a thumbs up? You can see my screen again. Sweet. All right. Go ahead and get here. All right. So we talked about this. Winter weather doesn't just happen often here. Doesn't happen often here, but when it does, it can be bad. So we talked about Winter Storm Uri. I'm sorry for the traumatic pictures that may be displayed on screen right now. But yeah, this was, we had a couple different events in the last, looks like 10, 12 years. This one right here that you see in 2011 was a winter storm that actually was very interesting because it affected the DFW area at the time the Super Bowl was here. And so that was a huge weather event that affected a large area of the region as well, up here, at least in North Texas. In 2013, they had what they called the ice apocalypse that affected a large area of North Texas as well. So here you can see this mile marker was for Sanger. That's not too far north of us. And then we have Winter Storm Uri, which a lot of you guys may or may not have lived through, depending on when you moved here to Texas. But yeah, we all went through this. As you can see, I think this is a really funny, and Jennifer, hopefully this isn't bringing back bad memories, but this was the entire state of Texas was under the winter storm warning on Valentine's Day of all days, 2021. So yeah, that's what the state looked like. It was completely pink. So when it does happen, we have a lot of different issues that can be caused, as Jennifer had mentioned, depending on the temperature range. The lower the temperature goes, obviously, the more we see a lot of these issues. So we have power outages. The issue during 2021 was that a lot of the power generation that happened, a lot of those machines were under maintenance at the time. And then also they couldn't be fixed and brought up to speed fast enough because it takes a long time to start those generators back up. And so there was a lot of issues with power generation in Texas. It caused a lot of rippling effects in emergency management beyond just keeping the lights on. So burst pipes all over Texas. At the time of this storm, I was actually working for the Texas Division of Emergency Management. And that was the biggest thing that came out of that was we were doing a lot of damage assessments and debris management for flooding. Flooding of all things. It was people's houses being flooded, and it's the same effect that a rain event was having, except it was all the pipes that were in those buildings were bursting. And so that was an interesting case of the result was not because of a rain event, it was because of the cold. So right there, I mentioned flooded buildings, the dangerous temperatures. We have throughout the DFW area, we've got all kinds of people, of every walk of life. We've got children, young adults, elderly, and they are all susceptible to cold temperatures at different levels, depending on their age and their fitness level, things like that, as well as the resources that they have on hand, where they live, whether it's an apartment complex, a home, single home, things like that. We had folks in nursing homes. We had folks in hospitals, all throughout the DFW area, and they all needed temperature to maintain, or they all needed electricity to maintain their temperatures in those buildings. So when the temperature was out for prolonged periods, the temperature inside those buildings would drop, and those people would be susceptible. Boil water notices. The water treatment systems also were having issues with this, both with flooded pipes as well as the power outages, not being able to circulate the water. So they had to issue boil water notices as well. You couldn't just drink tap water. You needed to boil it first. The supply and demand impacts. I don't know however many of you remember the run on toilet paper that happened as well, not just from COVID, which was the year prior, but as they were kind of starting to bring their supply levels back up, people saw this winter weather event kind of coming in. They started stocking up on things like that they thought they might need. And it caused those supply impacts on the front end. But then the week-long, winter weather disruption caused disruption for it to be restocked later on. So those supply and demand impacts were long-lasting during that event. And then, of course, dangerous roads. And we have a whole section about driving safely on winter weather roads, which we'll get to towards the end. Oh, didn't even realize there were pictures, guys. Sorry, I'm scrolling through. I didn't realize they were going to show up one at a time. So there you go. So talking a little bit more again about Winter Storm Uri again, this and the reason we do bring this one up quite a bit is because it was in a way traumatic enough that people remember it. And so they kind of remember their own experience. They attach it to their own experience of what it was like to live through that. It caused 246 deaths in Texas, and the deaths were caused by primarily hypothermia, 66%, motor vehicle accidents, 9%, carbon monoxide poisoning, which we'll also talk about in depth a little bit, at 8%, fires, and falls, people slip, tripping, and falling. So we'll talk about kind of some of those issues a little bit more in depth. Again, the biggest thing about this presentation, and I thank you guys for coming, is that we want you to be prepared. We want you to think about these things ahead of time. We want you to prepare yourself, your staff, your family, your extended family. Maybe they don't live here in Denton. Maybe you've got family that live out in East Texas, West Texas, Oklahoma, other areas that are affected by winter weather. And take the lessons you learn from here and share them. And if anybody is interested, I'm perfectly willing to share this PowerPoint with you so you can send it to family and they can look at it as well if they choose to. When it comes to weather monitoring, yes, we are a partner with National Weather Service in that we are a storm ready university. We just went through our recertification. This was our renewal from a couple of years ago. This is some of our older staff that are no longer here, but this was our original picture, and then I have got a picture of our newer team at the end of the presentation. But to meet this designation, we have to monitor the weather 24/7, or at least what I mean is we have to have someone on call to watch the weather depending on what the forecast looks like. If it's a sunny day, we may not be watching the weather too closely, but we're on call in case something does happen, right? When weather is happening, such as just happened this past Monday, we had a lot of a tornado watch that came out for a large portion of North Texas. We were in the EOC. We had monitors up. We're watching it as we go through the day, and just as we see it come through the region, it passes through. We're good to go. We send out any warnings and notices if we need to. Thankfully, we didn't have to do that this past Monday. We do use this same system for winter weather. So as winter weather's coming in, we're looking at the forecast. We're sending out notices to staff, executives, senior leadership at the university, kind of letting them know, hey, it's looking like we're going to have a major precipitation event next week. We need to start thinking about this, and we'll start some regular meetings. So it really is this right here is really just about situational awareness, that we can have collaborative meetings as early as possible. So when winter weather does come in the forecast, as I kind of mentioned, we do have a inclement weather assessment team that we form. It is not just those of us here in the EOC. It is members from our police department, facilities department, auxiliary services, which houses housing and dining, and a couple other different ones I'm forgetting at the moment. But those are the ones that mainly come together to kind of talk about what are we looking at. We do student affairs is there as well. So student affairs is there, so at least they have some kind of heads up of what they may need, what some decisions they may need to do as it comes to student affairs and registrar and enrollment, and what are we going to do with classes, all that kind of stuff. We connect with the National Weather Service to get the latest forecast. They have phone calls throughout the day. Usually some of them are pretty early because they're talking to the school districts, because obviously the school districts are a major choice in whether or not other businesses or universities or other employers are going to close, because if their children can't go to school, the parents aren't going to be able to go to work either. So that we take that into consideration. So we're on those calls. And then if the decision is ever made to close campus, that will come from the president and his office. He will make the ultimate decision. And it's a hard decision sometimes. They have to weigh in, how confident is the forecast? Is it confident for sure? Is it kind of wishy-washy? Is it like 50%? It could go really either way. But when we're starting to see that confidence level breach 50% and the expected impacts are going to be at a certain level, mainly like sleet, rain, ice that could refreeze in the coming days, we take that into consideration very seriously. And if it reaches the point to where we're making the decision, university brand strategy and communications and the president's office will craft a message, and they will send that out through the Eagle Alert to issue the closure. Sometimes that happens on the day of the closure. Sometimes they'll close preemptively for the next day, depending on the timing. If it's all clear and everyone's kind of come to work, and then we're starting to see, hey, this rain and sleet, all this winter weather starting to accumulate on the roads a little earlier than we thought, and maybe it was supposed to come in the evening, but now it's kind of going to be here by 3 p.m. The decision may be made to release early, right, and go home. We want people to get home before the roads are closed or really impassable, right? If it's not going to be till the next morning and the confidence is pretty high, it's not going to come in till the next morning, we may delay that and just send out a closure preemptively for the next day. But that the day of will stay business as usual. So I recommend just pay attention to the Eagle Alerts. It can come at any time, really. It just kind of depends on what we're seeing in our conversations with National Weather Service and other universities that are around the DFW area, and kind of getting a feel for what they're doing. And then ultimately we make our recommendation to the president, and then it's ultimately up to his decision. So the Eagle Alert, we kind of talk about this in a lot of our presentations. So you guys have probably seen this before if you're staff. You also should have already seen a test. I think there's one coming up pretty soon. We did one a couple months ago, so it's probably time for our next one soon. But this is what it looks like. You'll get a call, a text, and email. It won't look exactly like this for winter weather. It will have much more information. This right here just says, this is a test, right? So it's not a real alert. Right down here, you see an example of what an Eagle Alert would look like on one of the screen takeovers, the Alertus screen takeovers. It says this is an Eagle Alert, right? It'll still say that, but instead of giving you information about a tornado warning, it'll say, the decision has been made to close the university due to incoming winter weather. Please stay tuned, for more information as it becomes available. And then we will, on a day-to-day rolling basis, we will send out another Eagle Alert to let people know what the decision is on the next following day. So on the day of, you'll get the first one, and then the next day, as we reconvene throughout the night and in the morning, they'll make the decision about the next day and the following day. I think for Winter Storm Uri, we sent out 7 or 8 of these, right? We were closed down. It was every day. We were just kind of pushing it, just kind of delaying it until finally we're like, hey, we will go ahead and do. We'll come back to normal operations on Monday, whatever, right? They'll make that decision. Here's again what it looks like on the Eagle Alert for your phone. I recommend, and we put this right here, take a picture of this, put the Eagle Alert in your phone and as a contact, and put this as its text message. And then this is its phone number. So whenever you get a text from this number or a call from this number, it will display Eagle Alert, right? That way you'll never have to guess who it is. We're not a spam caller. We're not anyone calling you that you don't know. It's the university. We're letting you know, yep, there's an alert you should pay attention to. So now we'll get into types of winter weather. We have a couple of different types, and you've probably heard these terms, but maybe you aren't completely sure what each one means. So we'll get a little bit into that. Here's some visual representation of kind of what you might see here on the right side of the screen. Sleet, snow, freezing rain and ice, which is primarily what we're concerned about, and then severe storms. Quick little in the chat question, little interaction here. In general, which do you think is the most dangerous? Freezing rain, sleet, or snow? If you guys want to type that in the chat, we'll read off kind of like what we're seeing here. Sleet, I see an answer for sleet. Any others? Sleet, okay. Freezing rain. Freezing rain, freezing rain. See 3 for freezing rain. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Sleet, black ice. Yep, black ice is bad. Black ice, and we'll talk a little bit about black ice in a second, but to kind of show you what this looks like visually, how it forms, you have snow, which is no melting has occurred. The moisture that's up in the air in the clouds, they freeze into crystals. And if Jennifer's still here and I get any of this wrong, please correct me. But this is, I'm going off of your graphic here and my own knowledge. So if I get something wrong, just let me know. But the crystals freeze and they fall through all cold air. The air was cold the entire way down to the ground, so it stays in a crystal form, and that's what we know as snow, right? We have an area right here as the warmer air front. A mass has kind of inserted itself between where it's freezing. Those crystals will fall through that warm air mass just enough to where they can melt, but then they will refreeze once they get below that air mass, kind of closer to the ground, and that becomes what we know as sleet, right? Snow melts and refreezes before reaching the surface. A larger mass of warm air will actually keep it liquid for longer, but because it's cold, it kind of hits the ground without having time to refreeze in the air. It will hit the ground and then it will refreeze once it hits the ground. So instead, it'll hit the ground as a liquid, but then it will freeze into ice. So snow melts and refreezes on contact with the surface. And then, of course, we have just regular rain. So we may get quote unquote snow, but because of some warm air that might be above us, it never actually turns into ice. We never knew that it was snow up there, right? In this case, I believe, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, freezing rain is considered the most dangerous. Is that correct? Is that still correct?
They all are dangerous.
Okay.
But no, if I had to answer one, I honestly would say freezing rain. Snow and sleet, I mean, I don't want to defer the severity of any of them or the impact of any of them. Snow and sleet can kind of be pushed off a little bit more than freezing rain can when it freezes on contact. It's much more difficult to remove once it adheres to to the surface, whether it's a sidewalk or a street. Also, freezing rain, of course, can weigh down on your power lines, any ice collection there, and that can exacerbate any power outages or like not snapping power lines, but can't think of the term. But yes, yeah. I think overall freezing rain, especially for our area, freezing rain, the impacts tend to be exacerbated than they are versus like just sleet or just snow. However, we never have just one type. It's always a combination of something. So yes.
Yeah. So I would say, guys, like anytime you see any of those particular words in any of the alerts that are going out, pay attention to all of them. Freezing rain, as they mentioned, it covers the roadways, and you get what this term called black ice. There's a couple other different ones out there. Cobblestone ice was another one, but black ice is that it may not even be rain. It could be a pipe that burst right on the side of irrigation on the side of a road, and that water runs over into the road and then freezes. And black ice just simply means it's difficult to see at night because it doesn't reflect light the same off of your headlights, and you end up skidding over because it's very thin, doesn't reflect a lot, you don't really see it, right? So that's just all things to pay attention to, and yes, they're all dangerous. So what are some things you can do to prepare now? I'm going to tell you right now, you're doing one of them, right? You are here. You are preparing by simply attending this presentation. So I want to say thank you. You've already got a jump start on it. paying attention to weather reports, especially from the National Weather Service and those official sources. I know there's we like to pay attention to our local meteorologists as well. We do as well, but they are getting their information from the National Weather Service. So even if you go directly to the National Weather Service, you'll be getting the same information our meteorologists are getting as well. I like to have both, right? I like to have my local news. I like to have National Weather Service. And of course, here we use other tools as well that we pay for the university. Prepare for and plan for what you would do in the event of a power outage. So assume that, just take a mental, I guess exercise and just think about what would I do if the power went out for a day or two and the temperatures were below freezing. Would I be good? Do I have enough food in my pantry? Do I have batteries for flashlights? Do I have batteries to charge my phone? We have to stay in communication with those in our family. Maybe our job, let her know like, hey, or let our boss know like, hey, I can't come into work because I've got to care for my kids and we have no power. Things like that. How are you going to be able to communicate? Warm clothes that are appropriate for layering one on top of the other. Gathering supplies in case you need to stay home for several days without power. And again, it can be whatever you assess to be something that you need. Whenever winter weather drops below 32 degrees, it should be that trigger for you to start thinking about what we call the 4 Ps: people, pets, pipes, and plants. So people, first, who are the people that I know that could be susceptible to cold if their power went out? A good example would be, again, kind of coming back to Winter Storm Uri. Our power actually went out for probably about 18 hours the first day. We got it back for 6 hours overnight. We were very thankful for that. But then the next day it went out again. And because it had been dropping continuously and staying low, our house was getting very cold. So I sent my wife and our kids to Wichita Falls with some family that was living next to the Air Force Base. They never lost power up there. I had to stay at home because I had a grandmother who couldn't move. She's very elderly, couldn't really move very well. It was going to be very difficult, even just moving her from her car over all that ice, or from her house into her car to move her, right? So we decided to keep her there, and she had a gas stove, and I went over there and kind of kept that lit for her, keeping her warm, and I would check on her each day, make sure she had food, water, everything else she needed, right? Pets, if you've got pets that are outdoor pets, bring them inside. If you still got some warmth, if your power's still on, if your power's off, you need to go somewhere. You're sending your family somewhere that is warmer. Send the pets with you, right? Especially depending on what type of pet you have. We have fine furry friends, as well as some people have turtles and reptiles that are cold blooded, and they do not fare well with the temperatures at all. So it depends on what type of pet you have. Birds, things like that, they all handle temperatures differently. So definitely look into your type of animal that you have as a pet and what their cold tolerances are. And that could be your trigger for when do I need to think about, putting them up in a boarding school or taking them somewhere warmer, right? Pipes, you can insulate them. You can cover them from the outside, especially with like a foam, or especially like a heat or cold resistant foam, things like that. You can find these at Home Depot or Lowe's, any hardware store, really. I'm not going to belabor the point there. There are really good guides on how to insulate your pipes very effectively. And that's kind of beyond the scope of this class, but I want to direct you to those resources. If you've lived through Texas for any length of time, you probably have dealt with, protecting your pipes at some point. So we'll just, definitely protect them, because when they burst, you may not know it first because the water's frozen. You may not know until it thaws. So definitely be proactive with your pipes. And then, of course, if you have any plants outside that you care about that may be susceptible to the cold and may not regrow afterwards, bring them inside as well. Or you can cover them. Some of they may be fine as long as they're covered. They don't have frost on them. So you can look into the types of plants that you have and if they need to be covered or actually brought inside. Building your emergency kit for your home. I recommend to keep one in your house, keep one in your car, and consider keeping one at work. The way I do it is I have a larger kit at my house where my family is, and then I keep one in my car because that comes with me to work, right? So it's like a backpack. I just throw a bunch of stuff in there, and then it just sits in my trunk, and I never have to use it, thankfully. I've never had to use it, thankfully, but I have it in case I need it. It's got things like extra batteries, first aid kit, definitely a first aid kit, flashlights, food and water. So food is something you definitely want to cycle out. Don't just put it in there and then leave it there forever. They do expire, right? So any kind of food that you put in a kit, definitely make it something you cycle out. excuse me, whether it's a granola bar, protein bar, meal replacement bar, something like that, or an actual like canned food, something like that. Definitely make sure you're checking the expiration date on it, put a reminder on your phone, and definitely check it. So just not going to go into it. Food safety, guys, right? Same thing with water. Water is pretty good though. You can keep a bottle of water for a pretty long time as long as it's sealed and sanitary. You should be good. But I do recommend cycling that out, at least once a year or so as well. Couple of things I mentioned that I have in mind is a can opener. So if you have canned food, make sure you have a can opener as well. That's something I see some people will create a kit, they'll put a can, some canned foods, and then they forget to have the can opener there with them. You can grab little ones for $1 or $2 on Amazon. Local maps, if you're having to drive and your phone dies and you're like, I'm not quite sure exactly where to get, do you have a physical map in your car's glove box? I tell folks that's what the glove box is for. You can grab them pretty much at any gas station now, I think, or print one. You can just, go online ahead of time, find a map of like your local area, at least your drive home, maybe with some alternate routes in case there's a major accident. I have to drive between the Alliance area in North Fort Worth and Denton. And it seems like every day there's a major accident on 35. So I know all my little, pathways to get to and from work along I-35. So I recommend doing that, especially if it's an area maybe you're not as familiar with or you're new to the area. Print some maps and have that in your backpack or in your glove box. Flares or reflective triangle, those are important for if you're having to change a tire on the roadway after dark anyway. So even if it's not winter weather needed for winter weather specifically, I recommend having some kind of illumination device or reflective device for any kind of emergencies you might have in your vehicle at night. An ice scraper, for your windshield as well, so you can see. Car cell phone charger, and then cat litter or sand. It'll weight down your car in the winter months, as well as you can use it as grit to help get tire traction again if you find yourself stuck on the side of the road during an icy or sleet or winter weather event, right? For safe home heating, again, I kind of mentioned, I'm kind of coming back to some of the threats we saw or the deaths that we saw during Winter Storm Uri, and 4% of them were due to fire. And that is due to people lighting candles or fireplaces or any other kind of fire in or near their home, and it causes a death due to fire, right? The fire spreads out of control too quickly, and then you're in an event where the roads are slick and it may take longer realistically for the fire department to get to you. So you need to be very cautious when using fire in your home, especially if you're using it to warm your home. You have to have really good discipline when it comes to that. You want to take special precautions to ensure you're warming your home safely as well. You don't want to use unsafe heating practices that could lead to CO2 poisoning, like using gas stoves and things like that. I'm going to say right here, never ever bring a portable generator that runs on gas into your home. Right? If you have a generator that's like a battery and is charged, that's fine. If it runs on gas and it has any kind of exhaust, you should never have it in your home. This happens every single winter. It seems like I hear about cases of people that were running their car in their garage, right, to stay warm with the garage door closed, and those carbon monoxide fumes, they build up. Carbon monoxide, contrary to popular belief, is actually odorless. You can't smell it. That's why we have carbon monoxide detectors, which we'll talk about in a second. But you definitely do not want to have your car running inside your garage with the garage door down, and you definitely do not want to have a generator inside your home. Another option would be a space heater. So if you have a little electrical generator, electrical battery, you can run a space heater off of that for a while. And a space heater is electrical, just plugs right in. It doesn't gas operate. But however, they do cause 1/3 of home heating fires. So you do have to be careful of where you put it. Don't put it near to the drapes. Don't put it near blankets. Things like that. You want to make sure it's in a place where it is not going to be flammable. Don't set it on carpet as well. I recommend a tiled or a wood surface. It needs to be off the ground, or at least off of carpet, anything that could be potentially flammable or that could melt. So you want to also make sure it has an auto shut-off switch in case it tips over. A lot of these, will have this little mechanism on the inside where it tips over. It knows that it's tipped over and it will shut off. So look for one that has that feature as well. And then again, if you want to bring a space heater to campus, realize in the winter months, even though we may have power, we do have AC, a lot of the buildings are older. We do get a lot of requests for these. I don't know if anybody here has one. If you do, you could raise your hand, let us know like that you're in one of those buildings that has one, but there is a process you have to go through. You have to request a space heater. We come out, our fire and life safety person will come out and we'll check the actual electrical outlet of your building and make sure that you're good to go for a particular brand or a particular voltage of heater. Here's a real life example of an apartment fire started by a space heater from the Bronx, New York in 2022. So this is just a couple years ago. It killed 19 people. So it's definitely not something to play around with. It is definitely, it's not like not that we're trying to scare you, but at the same time, like space heaters are a heating element. They are they can cause flames. And so we need to be careful of that. When it comes to fireplaces, you want to keep a metal or heat tempered screen around it for those embers that like to waft out of it. Keep anything that can burn at least 3 feet away from a fireplace, wood stove, or space heater, and have your chimney or flue inspected each year. Kind of already mentioned this. Never use a generator, camp stove, charcoal grill, gasoline, or propane heater indoors. Never heat a home by using the stovetop or oven, and keep generators at least 20 feet away from doors, windows, and vents outside, right? You don't want, even though it's outside, you don't want the wind or anything to come inside your house. And need that carbon monoxide to be near an entryway into your house. And then again, I already mentioned, don't sit in a running vehicle in an enclosed space. When we talk about carbon monoxide, these symptoms are dizziness, chest pain, confusion, blurred vision, headache, shortness of breath, and nausea. Every home should have a carbon monoxide alarm. It's an odorless, colorless gas. It's very toxic and potentially fatal if inhaled. It's found in the fumes of burned fuels. Anything that's burning, including propane, it's there. Cars, trucks, small engines, stoves, lanterns, grills. A lot of people will use their camping lanterns and space heaters they do run on propane. But they are meant to be used in a tent or something that has a lot of ventilation. It is not meant to be used inside of a home or garage. And gas ranges, even like using your gas stove, right? Shouldn't do that either. And certain furnaces as well. So you may have a fire alarm that also has a carbon monoxide alarm. So I would just say check what you have currently, and if you don't have one, it's pretty simple to go have one and have one buy one and have one installed. It looks just like something like this, right? But see right here, it's kind of got both. It's wireless. It can detect smoke as well as it can detect carbon dioxide right here. So kind of getting into the extreme cold, what should we do if the temperatures are dropping? First thing we want to do is we want to limit our time outside. We want to wear many layers of clothing if you have to go outside. Monitor the weather and emergency information that may be coming from trusted sources. Close blinds or curtains to keep heat in the home. And you can close off rooms you're not using to avoid wasting heat. So especially central air and AC, you can close off some of the rooms around the exterior and give you a couple extra insulation areas, and then you're in the living room, right, or whatever, the central area where all the heat is kind of contained. Stuff towels or rags and cracks under the doors. Check on your neighbors and individuals who may become more susceptible to the cold, such as older adults and young children, and be alerts for the signs and symptoms of hypothermia and frostbite. If you must go out, definitely dress properly for the cold. You want to know the symptoms of cold stress and monitor yourself, plus those around you. Biggest thing is to stay dry. Worse than being cold is being wet and cold, right? So if you're wet, that as any wind, the wind chill, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but as wind takes, convection is still working. So it's going to take what heat you do have away from you if you're wet. So if you're dry, you want to make sure that you want to stay dry. And if you do have wet clothes, you want to change those out for dry clothes as soon as you possibly can. Water, snow, ice, and sweat can increase heat loss due to that convection I was mentioning. Drink warm, non-alcoholic, and non-caffeinated fluids. So as much as I love coffee and caffeinated beverages, if you're going to be drinking anything that's caffeinated, you need to drink even more water to offset your hydration levels. So just be aware of that. So dressing for the weather is kind of what it looks like. So I thought this was a really great graphic we've used for a few years. If it's just chilly out, adding layers will help you keep warm as the temperature starts dropping. So you're thinking 1 to 2 layers, maybe one long layer on the as for the bottom, outer layer to keep out the wind and rain, and then warm shoes that are waterproof. If it's starting to get cold, maybe at the 32-degree mark, 2 to 3 layers, warm hat, gloves, outer layer, it keeps out wind and then wet snow that may be falling on you, maybe 2 layers on your bottom half, as well as waterproof boots. That's the other biggest one too. And then when you have that extreme cold, which would be that 10 degrees or less, as Jennifer was talking about, we're thinking definitely warm hat, 3+ layers, plus one of those layers should be an insulating layer, gloves, 2, maybe 3 layers plus on the lower half, waterproof boots, maybe 1 or 2 layers of socks, depending on what you got, what type of boots you have. A face mask as well for your nose and your lips, which a lot of folks forget about the nose and lips. They think about covering their ears, but the nose and lips are also those kind of fleshy structures on the outside of our skull that can freeze. They're out there. They're not part of our warm like core. So we definitely need to protect them as well. So wearing a face mask can help there. And then an outer layer to keep out the wind. So you've got all these other layers on top, and then you've got this one extra layer of that windbreaker as well. Here's the wind chill chart. I won't belabor the point too much here, as we've kind of already talked about it, but I didn't want to show it because I think it's kind of interesting. When you think about the temperature and then the wind miles per hour, the actual miles per hour that it is, so you can check this yourself. And a lot of apps now auto-calculate this for you, which is nice. They get all their data from the National Weather Service, and they have maybe a different UI here and there to find one that you like. But the wind chill there that's auto-calculated is calculated based on the actual measured temperature and what the wind is for your area. So I think that's great, because you can see here, it might be, let's say it's like 30 degrees. I'm like, oh, that's not so bad. But I walk outside and it's 10 miles per hour. It's going to feel like 21, right? It's the more it's gusting, the more the wind keeps going up and up, it drops, 2 degrees per 5 miles per hour. So as Jennifer was talking about, that 10-degree is right here. So if we have 60 miles per hour winds and 30-degree weather, it's going to feel like it's 10. So it's going to feel like it's not just that, hard freeze. It's going to feel like the extreme freeze, or it's not just going to feel like a regular freeze. It's going to feel like that hard freeze kind of weather. This doesn't happen a whole lot, but when it does, we do see wind in that 20, 25, 30 mile per hour range sometimes. So it can feel pretty darn cold. So definitely pay attention to that when you see it. So now I'll talk about a few different injuries that can occur with cold stress. One would be your immersion and trench foot, which would happen when your socks get wet and you haven't been able to keep them dry. Injury to the foot caused by exposure to the wet and cold conditions. In this case, you're going to have symptoms of reddening skin, numbness, leg cramps, swelling, tingling pain. You could end up getting blisters or ulcers on your feet, bleeding into the skin, and the really bad one is gangrene, right? You saw a lot of this during World War I. That's why it's called trench foot, because they would fight in trenches and they would get these symptoms. So that's why it's really important to keep your feet dry. You want to remove your boots and or wet socks and dry your feet, and then avoid walking on your feet, as this may damage the tissue. So you want to get it nice and dry and then start rewarming it. With frostbite, you're going to start to lose the feeling and color around your face, fingers, and toes. Again, those fleshy areas on our face, as well as our fingers that are obviously they're smaller structures. They can freeze quicker. They may become numb. They may get white or grayish yellow in color, and they may feel like firm or waxy. Your skin may feel firm or waxy. The response to this is you want to go to a warm room, soak skin in warm water, use body heat to warm yourself. Do not massage the skin or use a heating pad. Seek medical attention if symptoms do not improve. And then hyperthermia is simply any situation in which the body reaches an unusually low body temperature, which is usually below 30, 96.7 degrees on average in our core. If it drops below that for any length of time, you get shivering, exhaustion, confusion. Your hands may be fumbling. You're going to lose fine motor skills. You might have trouble remembering things. You'll have a short-term memory loss, your slurred speech, as well as you may feel drowsy. So again, Biggest thing is to rewarm yourself. Go to a warm room, warm the center of your body first, starting with your chest, neck, and groin area, those areas where our blood circulates throughout our body. Keep dry and wrapped up in warm blankets, including the head and neck, and then seek medical attention if your conditions are not improving or the person that maybe you're helping is not improving. When it comes to slips, trips, and falls, slippery surfaces may form when cold temperatures are accompanied by winter precipitation. Again, I kind of mentioned we did have some deaths during winter storm Uri due to falls, because when people fall, they can hit their head, they can hit things and damage other parts of their body than just falling, right? So slippery surfaces can develop because of not just because of precipitation. I kind of mentioned when we're talking about black ice, sprinkler systems or other pipe breaks can cover surfaces, sidewalks, roads, when it's below freezing temperature, and then somebody doesn't see it and they slip on it. I have myself slipped on ice and I was completely horizontal, fell right on my back. And as a miracle, I didn't hit my head, but it hurts. And I didn't even see it. It looked just like normal concrete. So got to be very careful. If you do happen to find a slippery location or a broken pipe or sprinkler on the UNT campus, you can immediately notify facilities, and the number's right here, or you can email work control as well. This number, I believe, goes to work control, and just let them know the location and that there's ice there, and they can come and check out what was bursted, what is causing the leak. If it wasn't precipitation, they can fix that, and then they can also de-ice the area. A few extra helpful tips. Keep frozen water bottles in your freezer. So if you do lose power, at least you can keep your food that needs to stay cold. And then as it melts, you can drink that water if you need to. Drip your faucets overnight to prevent pipe freezes in a bathtub or into containers in case you need fresh water later. Keep extra blankets in your emergency kit. We keep a couple extra giant hoodies in our car at all times because my kids are small, especially my son. He's like a stick figure and he gets cold sometimes. And so we always have a hoodie, even in the summer, just in case we need it. We go to a movie theater, we know it's going to be, really cold in there, the air conditioning, we can bring it in there. And then we take it back to our car. We've got it there all the time for the winter months as well. Last little thing we have for you guys is about winter driving. Maintaining your vehicle is probably the number one thing you want to do. We'll talk about that. Pack what you need to have, what you may need to have on hand. Stay off the road if you can, but if you have to go out, the biggest three things we want you to do is plan your route, know what to do if you stall, and drive safely. Maintaining your vehicle is just, take it in to have the radiator system serviced or check the antifreeze level leading up to winter weather months. Replace the windshield wiper fluid with a wintertime specific mixture. Make sure the tires in your car have adequate tread and air pressure. Replace those worn tires and fill up the low tires with air. I personally go to Quick Trip. They've got free air. So anytime my tires are low, I know I can go get it filled up pretty quickly next time I get gas. So I recommend that as well. Keep the gas tank near full during the winter months. I usually keep about a half a tank in my car. And this in the winter months will avoid ice in the tank and the fuel lines. And then just, generally just keep your car in good working order. Check any of those check engine lights that come on. Just a basic tune up or oil change that you might need goes a long way, as well as checking your emergency flashers, your oil levels, and all that other stuff. What to pack in your car. We are kind of mentioned like different kits you can have, but having a cell phone charger for your car is really good. I think most of us do at this point, but in case you don't, you can grab one for pretty cheap. First aid kits, we give them out at different events. So if you come see us at a tabling event, we've got little first aid kits you can grab from us. Otherwise, you can get them from the store. Blankets, as I kind of mentioned that, drinking water, snacks, flashlight, rags, paper towels, pre-moistened wipes, shovel, maybe a small little compact shovel to help dig out snow or ice from around your tires, maybe some gloves, and then traction aids. I kind of already mentioned that, salt, sand, or non-clumping cat litter. Jumper cables is a big one. Highly recommend that. And then an ice scraper as well. If you have a basic set of tools along with a set of duct tape, that can help you out as well for different things you might need to do. Taping a road flare to your vehicle so people see it. I don't know if you want to do that, but maybe like a glow stick or something like that if your lights aren't working. Planning your route. So definitely check the weather in advance. Leave early. Be familiar with the maps and directions to your location, as I mentioned, and then let others know your route and your ETA. So if you don't show up, they know like, hey, well, I know he left at this time and he's not here and it's been 3 hours. He should be somewhere between here. They can call the police in case they're like, hey, maybe he got stuck on the side of the road and his phone died, right? So let people know your route and when you're supposed to be there so that if something happens, you can't contact them, they can contact the authorities for you if they feel like something's wrong. If you stall, you get out of the roadway if possible, but stay in your car, call for emergency assistance. Don't overexert yourself, turn on your hazard lights, and run your vehicle just enough to stay warm. Make sure the exhaust pipe is clear. Again, you don't want that carbon monoxide to back up into your vehicle. So dig out, if there's snow starting to dig up around your exhaust pipe, go dig that out, and then keep that clear as you run your vehicle for heat. When it comes to driving safely, you want to steer into your skids if you end up skidding, but ultimately you can save a lot just by going slow. Know what your brakes will do when you slide. You want to stop on an anti-lock brake or pump the non-anti-lock brake. So you need to know what type of brakes you have in your car. I think most modern cars have anti-lock brakes, but just double check, right? Your car manual should have that information. Remember, it takes much longer to stop on ice, and just having some good hygiene when it comes to driving can save you a lot of time and energy and potentially car repairs. Here's what it looks like to recover from a skid. If you start to skid, you want to take your foot off the gas and you want to turn the steering wheel in the same direction as the back end is sliding. So if I'm here and I'm starting to slide this way and I'm starting to look over here, I'm going to turn the same direction that I'm pointing because it'll keep my wheels pointed, and then I'll slowly start to come back and I'll recover. But my wheels were pointing forward the entire time. As you see right here, that's how you recover from a skid. Obviously, it is easier to recover from a skid that you were going slow for than fast for. So the slower you're going, the better. Again, you want to take your foot off the gas, turn that steering wheel in the same direction, and you want to steer into the skid. If you get stranded, stay in your vehicle, bring things with you from your trunk into the passenger area, move around frequently. You don't want to just sit there in silence. You want to actually be moving your body. Moving your body generates energy, which generates heat. Do not eat snow. As much as you might be tempted. Don't eat snow. You never know what also could have, the gas, the carbon monoxide from your car, anything could be sitting on top of that snow and you eat it. You don't want to eat the snow. And then run the motor periodically. Even if you do turn off your car to save gas from time to time and you turn it on, make sure you're turning it on, reheat the car a little bit, let it run, and then turn it back off. But again, make sure your exhaust pipe is not blocked. So I think that's basically it. I think when it comes to vehicle, if you do have an issue with your car on campus, we do have a resource. You can call UNT Transportation during business hours, 940-565-3020. This could be, we're about to all go home. They just gave the eagle alert, winter weather's coming. You go to start your car doesn't work, right? Got cold, battery died, whatever. UNT Transportation come help you out. If it happens to be after hours, UNT Police Department may be able to help. You just call their non-emergency number, and that's right here. And they've got jumper cables and things like that. That's basically it. We went 2 minutes over. Apologies for that. But if you had to drop off, we're going to be recording this again. We'll have this posted on our YouTube channel. But at this point, we do want to still have time for questions. So if anybody's here and has some questions they would like to answer, I still see Jennifer's on as well. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about the presentation today, we'll be happy to answer them for you guys. And here's our information as well. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, X, and then our website is right there. My name's been Corey, and then Hannah's been in the chat. So I'll give it like 15 seconds for questions. All right, I see a lot of thank yous, no questions, so I think we're good. Jennifer, as always, is awesome working with you. Thank you for attending this with us. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to future collaboration. And thank you to everyone who attended, whether you're from UNT, whether you're not from UNT, you're just a guest. We welcome you to our campus virtually. And we hope you guys have a safe and warm winter weather season this season.